The council chamber floated high above Nexus Prime, a massive station that had served as the center of galactic government for over 3,000 years. Inside the Great Dome, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections. The air recyclers hummed quietly, adjusting the atmosphere to suit everyone from the methane-breathing Crethians to the high-pressure Sulfine. Ambassador Teeman stood in the human section, his hands clasped behind his back. He wore the simple gray uniform that human diplomats had worn for 2 centuries. Beside him, Chief Negotiator Hyjin reviewed data on her tablet, her face calm but her eyes sharp. They both knew what was coming. The chairman, Velmuth of the Crethian Empire, raised his primary manipulator appendage. His translator device converted his clicking sounds into galactic standard. We call the vote on Resolution 4471. This resolution will open all registered hyperspace lanes to free traffic, removing restrictions and oversight requirements. Teeman stepped forward to the speaking platform. Mr. Chairman, the human delegation objects. These lanes were designed and mapped by human engineers. They require constant monitoring and maintenance. Opening them to unregulated traffic will cause accidents and damage the lane stability. Velmuth's eye stalks curved in what humans had learned was dismissal. Ambassador Teeman, your concerns are noted. However, the majority of council species believe this restriction is unnecessary. You cannot hold galactic commerce hostage with excessive safety concerns. It is not excessive, Hyjin said, moving to join Teeman. We have provided the safety data. 17 different— Enough, Velmuth interrupted. The human delegation has made their position clear for weeks. We vote now. The voting display lit up around the chamber. Green lights for approval, red for rejection. One by one, the lights appeared. The Crethians voted green. The Ordnians voted green. The Silthine Trade Consortium voted green. The Mentaxians voted green. Only 3 red lights appeared. The humans, the small Peltharian delegation, and the even smaller Wavian group. The resolution passes with 44 votes in favor, Velmuth announced. The hyperspace lanes will be opened within 30 days. Teeman looked at Hyjin. She gave him a small nod. He turned back to face the council. Mr. Chairman, the human delegation wishes to make a statement. Make it brief, Ambassador. We have other business. Teeman walked to the center of the chamber. His voice was quiet, but it carried in the acoustically perfect dome. For 217 years, humanity has served on this council. We have mediated disputes. We have shared our technology freely. We have maintained systems that keep galactic civilization running smoothly. We have done this because we believed in cooperation and mutual respect. Yes, Velmuth said. And the Council appreciates human contributions. Now, if there is nothing else, we are not finished. Teeman's voice remained calm, but something in his tone made the chamber fall silent. This vote today is not the first time the Council has overruled human objections. It is the 43rd such vote in the past 20 years. Each time we were told our concerns were excessive. Each time we were told we were being too cautious. Each time, the majority decided they knew better. Kixra of the Sulthine leaned forward in her liquid-filled chamber. Ambassador, if you are trying to change the vote, I am not. Teeman pulled a small device from his pocket. I am informing the Council that humanity is withdrawing from all Council activities, effective immediately. For a moment, no one moved. Then several species began making their sounds of amusement. The Crethian clicking sound that indicated laughter echoed through the chamber. You cannot simply leave the Council, Velmuth said, his tone amused. This is a childish response to losing a vote. We can leave, and we are leaving. Hyjin stepped forward. The Council Charter allows any member species to withdraw with proper notice. We are providing that notice now. All human personnel will evacuate Council facilities within 72 hours. All human-maintained systems will be transferred to Council control. All human technical assistance will cease. The laughter stopped. Velmuth's eye stalks straightened. You cannot be serious. We are completely serious, Teeman said. He pressed the button on his device. Across the galaxy, similar messages were being delivered to every station, every outpost, every facility where humans worked. Human ships are already preparing to depart. This is an overreaction, Kixra said, her voice translator making her concern obvious. One vote about hyperspace lanes? Not one vote, Haijin said. She pulled up a holographic display. 43 votes over 20 years. 67 formal human proposals rejected. 114 human safety recommendations ignored. 209 requests for basic respect and consideration dismissed as human emotionalism. The display showed all the data, every vote, every rejection. The council chamber was quiet now. Temin continued. We came to the council 2 centuries ago with hope. We wanted to be part of something greater. We shared our navigation systems. We shared our medical technology. We shared our engineering solutions. We mediated conflicts because we believed in peace. We fixed problems because we believed in cooperation. And we are grateful, Velma said, but his voice was uncertain now. Gratitude is not the same as respect, Temin said. You took our help, but you never listened to our concerns. You used our solutions, but you never valued our input. You benefited from our work, but you never treated us as equals. This is dramatic nonsense, said Thexville, the Ordnian military commander. So you lost some votes? That is how democracy works. Democracy requires that all voices be heard, Haijin said. Not just counted and ignored. We have been counted, but we have not been heard. Temin turned to address the entire chamber. We are leaving. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat to bring you back to the table. This is a decision. Humanity will no longer participate in a council that does not value what we offer. You are making a mistake, Velmuth said. You need the council for trade, for protection, we need nothing from you, Temin said simply. We have been self-sufficient since before we joined the council. We joined because we wanted to, not because we needed to. Now we are choosing to leave. Haijin tapped her tablet. All human technical databases are now encrypted and locked. All human personnel have been given recall orders. All joint projects with human involvement are hereby suspended pending transfer of authority. You cannot just encrypt data that belongs to the council. Kixra protested. It does not belong to the council, Haijin said. It belongs to humanity. We shared it voluntarily. Now we are choosing to stop sharing. Temin walked toward the exit. Haijin followed him. The rest of the human delegation stood and followed as well. 15 humans in gray uniforms, walking calmly toward the chamber doors. This is not over, Velmuth shouted. You will regret this. Temin stopped at the door and looked back. No, Mr. Chairman, we will not. We have documented every interaction, every vote, every dismissal. We tried for 200 years to be your partners. You treated us as your servants. That ends today. The doors closed behind the humans in the chamber. The remaining species sat in confused silence. Then the arguing began. The Krethians blamed the Ordnians for pushing too hard. The Ordnians blamed the Sulthene for caring only about profit. The Mentaxians insisted someone needed to stop the humans from leaving, but in the human docking bay, 15 ships were already powering up their engines. Across 47 worlds, in stations and outposts and facilities, human personnel were packing their belongings. Engineers were logging out of systems. Doctors were transferring patient files. Teachers were saying goodbye to students. In the command ship, Temin looked at Haijin. It is done. It is done, she agreed. Now we see what happens when they realize what we actually did for them. The human fleet departed together, jumping into hyperspace on lanes only they knew how to safely navigate. Behind them, the Galactic Council sat in their chamber, certain that the humans would come back within a week. Begging to return, they were very wrong. 3 weeks after the humans left, Engineer Doyon sat in his workshop on the human colony world of New Sol. He was designing a new type of plasma conduit, one that would work only with human ships. No more shared technology. No more hoping that other species would use it responsibly. His communicator buzzed. It was an old colleague, a Mentaxian named Rilpath, who worked as the council's chief economist. Doyon let it buzz. The fifth call this week? He went back to his work. On the station above, his former workspace sat empty. The quantum computers he had maintained were still running, but no one was updating them. No one was checking the error logs. No one was optimizing the algorithms that routed trade ships. Across 73 different systems, Doyon had tried to explain this to the council before he left. They had not listened. Across the galaxy. In the border region between Krethian and Ordnian space, a small territorial dispute was growing. The two species both claimed a mineral-rich asteroid field. For 30 years, human mediators had managed this dispute, quietly negotiating compromises, arranging shared mining rights, smoothing over incidents before they became conflicts. The human mediator was gone now. His office on Border Station 7 was empty. A Krethian mining ship moved into the disputed zone. An Ordnian patrol ship told them to leave. The Krethians refused. The Ordnians fired a warning shot. The Krethians fired back, not a warning. Within hours, 3 ships on each side were fighting. Within 2 days, it was 20 ships. The council called an emergency session to address the violence, but without human mediators to propose solutions. The two sides just shouted at each other. Military Commander Thexville watched the border conflict reports with growing concern. He tried to contact the human military liaisons who usually helped coordinate peacekeeping forces. All channels were closed. The humans were not responding to anyone. In another sector, Trade Coordinator Minho was shutting down the last of his operations. He had spent 15 years building trade networks that connected species who could not even breathe the same air. He had designed routing systems that could calculate profitable trade routes through hyperspace, accounting for hundreds of variables. Now he was erasing his access codes and transferring ownership to no one, really. The council had no one who understood how his systems worked. His assistant, a young Silthene named Pixal, had watched him work for 3 years. "Please," Pixal said through the translator, "show me how to maintain the routing system before you go." Minho looked at the eager young trader. He felt sorry for him. "Pixal, I spent 8 years learning this. I can't teach you in a week. Then stay and teach me properly. The council will pay whatever you ask." "It is not about money," Minho said quietly. "I tried to teach this to council staff for years. They always said they were too busy. They always said human methods were too complicated. They always said they would learn later. Now there is no more later." He sealed the last of his personal files and left. Behind him, the trade routing system continued to work. For now, but it was already showing signs of stress. Ships were being routed to stations that did not have the right facilities. Cargo was being mismatched with carriers. Efficiency was dropping by 2% per week. Economist Rilpath finally noticed the problem when trade revenues dropped 15% in 3 weeks. He called Minho again. No answer. He called Doyon. No answer. He called every human technical expert whose contact information he had. None of them answered. Rilpath began reviewing the council's systems, trying to understand how everything worked. What he found terrified him. The navigation systems had human-designed elements. The communication networks had human-maintained code. The safety protocols and mining operations were written by humans. The medical database that tracked diseases across species was organized using human algorithms. Everywhere he looked, he found human fingerprints. It was not that humans controlled these systems. It was that humans had been asked to fix problems, and they had fixed them. Over 200 years, they had made thousands of small improvements, written countless lines of code, optimized endless processes, and they had done it all voluntarily. Because they were helpful. No one had bothered to learn what the humans were actually doing. Everyone just assumed the systems would keep working. On the planet Voxia, the agricultural minister Krizel was dealing with a crisis. A new disease was spreading through the grain crops. Normally, the early warning system would have caught it weeks ago, when it was still manageable, but the early warning system was not working. It was showing green indicators when it should have been showing red. The problem was in the sensor calibration algorithms. which had been maintained by a human medical coordinator named Yunji. Yunji was now retired on a human colony world, tending her garden. Her communicator showed 43 missed calls from Voxia. She had looked at the first one. Seeing it was the agricultural minister who had voted against every human safety proposal for the past decade, and deleted all the rest. The grain disease spread. Within 2 weeks, Voxia's primary food crop was devastated. 40% of the year's harvest was lost. The council held another emergency session. They needed to arrange food shipments to Voxia, but the trade routing system that Minho had maintained was becoming less efficient every day. Ships were getting delayed. Cargo was getting lost. The emergency food shipments were taking twice as long as they should, people were going hungry, and the council was discovering that fixing things was much harder than they had thought. In deep space, a merchant ship carrying medical supplies suddenly found itself stranded. Their hyperspace navigation system had miscalculated the exit point. They were now floating in empty space, 3 light years from the nearest station. The captain sent out a distress call. The council's emergency response center received it. They tried to calculate a rescue route, but the hyperspace calculation software kept giving errors. A human engineer had designed the software. A human technician had maintained the error correction algorithms. There was no human engineer anymore. The rescue took 4 days instead of 4 hours. The merchant ship survived, but barely. Similar incidents were happening across council space. The faster-than-light communication network was developing lag. Some messages were taking hours to arrive instead of seconds. The problem was in the quantum encryption nodes, which humans had been quietly patching security vulnerabilities in for decades. Technology Oversight Director Sindra finally noticed the encryption problem when classified military communications were intercepted by pirates. She pulled up the security logs and found thousands of patches and updates, all signed by human technicians. The humans had been holding the entire communication network together, fixing holes, updating protocols, staying one step ahead of hackers and criminals. And they had done it so quietly that no one realized it was happening. Sindra tried to contact the human cybersecurity team. The contact codes were no longer valid. She tried to access the human security documentation. It was encrypted. The encryption key required human authorization. She tried to hire independent human contractors. They all refused. Word had spread through the human community. The council had not respected them. No human would work for the council now. Back at the Krethian-Ordnian border, the small conflict had grown into a serious battle. 15 ships destroyed, hundreds of crew members dead. The two species were threatening all-out war. Dexvol pulled up the records of the last 30 border disputes. All of them had been resolved by human mediators. The humans would talk to both sides separately, find common ground, propose creative solutions that let both sides claim victory. It looked easy when the humans did it. Dexvol tried it himself. He called both sides together. The Krethians and Ordnians just shouted at each other. Neither side would compromise. Neither side would listen. After 6 hours of useless meetings, Dexvol admitted defeat. The border war continued. By the end of the 3rd week, 14 separate conflicts had erupted across council space. Trade revenues were down 22%. The communication network was failing. Food shortages were appearing in 3 different sectors. Industrial accidents were increasing as human safety protocols were ignored or forgotten. And in human space, everything was fine. The human colonies were self-sufficient. They had their own trade networks, their own communication systems, their own food production. They had always had these things. They had just chosen to share with the council. Now they were not sharing anymore. Ambassador Tiemann received daily reports about the growing chaos in council space. He read them carefully, his face showing no emotion. Beside him, Haijin reviewed intelligence data. "The council is starting to panic," she said. "Good," Tiemann replied. "Let them panic. Let them understand what we were actually doing for them. How long do we wait?" "As long as it takes." Tiemann closed the report. "We spent 2 centuries helping them. They can spend a few months learning to appreciate it. In the council chamber, Chairman Velmuth was facing a vote of no confidence. Half the council species were blaming him for the human withdrawal. The other half were blaming each other. No one was admitting that they had all taken the humans for granted. The cracks in galactic civilization were spreading, and the humans were not coming back to fix them. 2 months after the human withdrawal, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. This time, the chamber was not filled with confident leaders. The representatives looked worried. Some looked frightened. Chairman Velmuth had survived the no-confidence vote, but barely. His eye stalks drooped with exhaustion. He had not recharged properly in weeks. "We must discuss the current crisis," he began. "Which crisis?" asked Kixra of the Silthene. "The trade collapse? The communication failures? The border wars? The food shortages? We have 17 different crises happening at once." On the agricultural world of Vuxia, the grain disease had spread beyond control. Minister Krizal stood before the council with a desperate request. "We need emergency food supplies. Our people are starving. Without the early warning system that detected crop diseases, we lost 40% of our harvest before we even knew we had a problem. We are sending food shipments," said Rilpath, the Mentaxian economist. "But the trade routing system is failing. Ships that should take 3 days are taking 10 days. Some ships are getting lost completely." "Then fix the routing system." Krizal said, "We cannot." Rilpath's translator made his distress obvious. "The human who designed it, Minho, is not responding. We have tried to reverse engineer his work, but it is incredibly complex. He integrated 73 different variables into the routing calculations. We understand perhaps 20 of them." Sindra, the technology oversight director, spoke up. "The routing system is only one problem. Our quantum communication network is degrading. We are losing 10% efficiency every week. The encryption nodes that humans maintained are failing. We have had 12 security breaches in the past month. Have you tried to hire human contractors?" Velmuth asked. Quotes, "Yes, they all refuse to work for the council." Sindra pulled up a message on the display. "This is the response I received from a human cybersecurity expert. You had 200 years to listen to our warnings. Now you want us to fix your problems for emergency wages?" The answer is no. In a medical facility on the Quenthian homeworld, doctors were struggling with a new outbreak. A virus was spreading through the population, a mutation of a common illness. Normally, this would have been detected early by the pandemic monitoring system, but the monitoring system was giving false readings. The sensors were miscalibrated. The human medical coordinator who had maintained the calibration protocols was named Yunji, and she was nowhere to be found. Yunji was indeed unreachable. She was on the human colony world of New Bizin, working in her garden. Her communicator showed 217 missed calls. She had stopped checking them after the first 50. She remembered the Quenthian health minister, the one who had called the human pandemic protocols excessive and expensive 3 years ago. He had cut funding for the early detection system, saying it was unnecessary. Now he was calling her every hour, begging for help. She continued planting tomatoes. On Quenthia, the virus spread. The death toll climbed. The council sent medical teams, but without proper early detection, the response was always too late. By the time the doctors arrived, the virus had already moved to 3 other population centers. The Quenthian representative stood before the council with fury in his voice. "Our people are dying because the humans took their medical knowledge with them. This is biological warfare." "It is not warfare," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. It was Ixtara, representative of the small Peltharian species. She was one of the 3 who had voted against the hyperspace resolution. "The humans did not give your people a disease. They simply stopped fixing your problems for you. That is the same thing." The Quenthian shouted. Quotes, "No, it is not." Ixtara's translator carried her calm tone. "The humans warned you 3 years ago that cutting the pandemic monitoring budget was dangerous. You ignored them. You said they were being too cautious. Now you are angry that they will not come and save you from your own decision. The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit that Ixtara was right. In the border region between Krethian and Ordnian space, the small conflict had become a full war. 50 ships destroyed now. Thousands dead. Both sides were demanding that the council intervene. Commander Thexval reported to the council with frustration. We cannot mediate this dispute. Every time we bring both sides together, they refuse to compromise. The humans used to handle these situations. How did they do it? They talked to people, Ixtara said. They listened to concerns. They found creative solutions. They treated both sides with respect. We are doing that. Thexval insisted. Are you? Ixtara pulled up a record. The last successful mediation, 32 years ago, took the human mediator 6 months of quiet conversations. She met with miners from both sides. She visited the disputed asteroid field personally. She learned about the history, the culture, the reasons both sides cared so much. Then she proposed a sharing arrangement that let both sides benefit. She paused. You have been trying to mediate this conflict for 6 weeks, and you have not left this station. You have not talked to anyone except the military commanders. You want a quick solution, but there is no quick solution. The humans knew that. You do not. The stock markets were in free fall. Trade revenues were down 45% now. Investors were panicking as they realized how deeply human expertise had been integrated into the galactic economy. Realpath presented his findings to the council. I have completed my analysis. Humans were directly involved in maintaining 63% of our critical infrastructure systems. They were indirectly involved in another 22%. 85% of our economy had some human contribution. How is that possible? Velmuth demanded. We never gave them that much authority. We did not give them authority, Realpath said. We gave them problems. When our systems failed, we asked humans to fix them. When our trade routes were inefficient, we asked humans to optimize them. When our species could not communicate clearly, we asked humans to improve the translation matrices. Every time we had a problem, humans would volunteer a solution. He pulled up a chart showing 200 years of human contributions. They did not do this by taking control. They did this by being helpful. And we never bothered to learn what they were actually doing because we assumed they would always be there to fix things. More ships were getting stranded in hyperspace. The navigation systems that humans had designed required constant updates to account for stellar drift and gravitational changes. Without those updates, the calculations were becoming less accurate. A passenger ship with 4,000 civilians appeared 3 light-years off course. A cargo vessel carrying medical supplies never emerged from hyperspace at all. Search and rescue teams were overwhelmed. Syndra pulled up the navigation code, trying to understand it. What she found amazed and terrified her. The human engineers had not just written simple navigation software. They had created a complex system that learned from every journey, that adapted to changing conditions, that predicted problems before they occurred. It was beautiful. It was brilliant. And it was utterly beyond the council's ability to maintain. She tried to access the human documentation for the system. It was encrypted. She tried to break the encryption. After 3 weeks of work, she succeeded, only to find that the documentation was written in a combination of technical language and human cultural references that made no sense to non-humans. One section, explaining a critical safety protocol, referenced something called Murphy's Law. Syndra spent 2 days trying to understand what Murphy's Law was and why it mattered for hyperspace navigation. She finally found a human cultural database that explained it. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. The humans had designed their entire navigation system around the assumption that problems would occur, and had built in dozens of backup systems and fail-safes. The council's systems assumed nothing would go wrong. When problems occurred, they catastrophically failed. On the colony world where Doyon worked, he received a visitor. Realpath had traveled to human space personally. Requesting permission to meet, Doyon agreed. Mostly out of curiosity, Realpath entered the workshop, his three-legged form moving awkwardly in the higher gravity. "Please," he said, "we need your help. The systems are failing. People are dying." "I know," Doyen said, not looking up from his work. "I read the reports." "Then come back. Help us fix things. Name your price." "Any amount of money, any position you want." Doyen finally looked at the Mentaxian. "You think this is about money? What else would it be about?" "Respect." Doyen set down his tools. "For 15 years, I maintained your quantum computers. I optimized your trade algorithms. I fixed bugs that no one else even noticed. Do you know how many times the Council thanked me?" Rilpath was silent. "0, Doyen continued. "Not once. But do you know how many times the Council overruled my safety recommendations?" 47. "Every time I said something was dangerous, I was told I was being too cautious. Every time I proposed an improvement, I was told the current system was good enough." "We were wrong," Rilpath said quietly. "We see that now. Now, after everything is falling apart. After people are dying. Now you see it." Doyen shook his head. "I am sorry for the people suffering. I truly am. But I will not come back to be ignored again." 4 months after the withdrawal, the Krathian Empire made a decision. If the humans would not share their technology willingly, the Krathians would take it by force. A battle fleet of 32 ships crossed into human territory. The fleet commander sent a message to the nearest human outpost. "Surrender your navigation systems and medical databases. Comply and we will not destroy your stations." The response came from Junho, the human defensive coordinator. "You are ordered to leave human space immediately. You have 30 minutes to comply." The Krathian commander made the clicking sound that indicated amusement. "You have no military presence here. Your nearest defense fleet is 3 systems away. You cannot stop us." 29 minutes, Junho replied. The Krathians moved forward. They approached the human outpost, expecting minimal resistance. What they found, instead, was a defensive network so sophisticated it made their military technology look like children's toys. Mines appeared from nowhere, having been cloaked in ways the Krathian sensors could not detect. Defense platforms that had seemed inactive suddenly powered up with energy signatures that dwarfed anything the Krathians had. Automated defense drones swarmed from hidden deployment bays. The Krathians tried to fight back. Their weapons hit defensive shields that absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. Their attempts to jam communications failed against human encryption. Their tactical computers were outmatched by human AI that predicted their moves before they made them. Junho sat in the defense command center, watching the battle displays with calm efficiency. Beside him, technicians monitored the automated systems. No one looked worried. "Should we disable their ships now?" one technician asked. "Not yet," Junho said. "Let them see how outmatched they are. Let them understand what human military technology actually looks like when we are not holding back." The Krathians fought for 2 hours. In that time, they managed to damage exactly 1 human defense platform. The automated systems destroyed 20 of their 32 ships. The remaining 12 fled. Junho sent a message to the retreating fleet. "Tell your council that humans have been designing defensive systems for 200 years. We just never bothered to show you our best work. Next time, we will not be so gentle." News of the Krathian defeat spread across the galaxy within hours. The message was clear. The humans had always been stronger than they appeared. They had simply chosen not to demonstrate it. In the council chamber, the response was divided. The hardliners, led by Velmuth, wanted to assemble a larger fleet and try again. The moderates wanted to find a diplomatic solution. The reformists, led by Ixtara, wanted to completely rebuild the council's relationship with humanity. The hardliners won the first vote. But when they tried to assemble a combined fleet, they discovered a new problem. The different species' military systems did not work well together. They had always relied on human technical liaisons to integrate their command systems. coordinate their communications, and ensure their weapons did not interfere with each other without humans. The combined fleet was a disaster. Ships could not communicate effectively. Targeting systems interfered with each other. Even basic coordination was nearly impossible. The military operation was abandoned before it even launched. While the Council argued among themselves, humanity was making new friends. Ambassador Nari had spent the past 4 months traveling to the independent colonies. The small species that had been ignored by the Council on the world of Pelthera, she met with the Planetary Council. These were a peaceful people, focused on art and philosophy. The Council had always dismissed them as unimportant because they had no military power and few resources. "We wish to offer a partnership," Nari said. "Not a treaty of control, but a genuine cooperation. We will share our medical technology with you. In exchange, we would like access to your philosophical texts and artistic traditions." The Peltherian leader, Tixel, was surprised. "You want our art? Not our minerals or our labor?" "We value what you value," Nari said. "The Council saw you as weak because you chose peace. We see you as strong for the same reason. We would like to learn from you." The Peltherians agreed. Within a week, human medical teams were helping Peltherian hospitals. Peltherian artists were teaching at human universities. Both sides were benefiting. Similar agreements were made with the Wavians, who were expert in agriculture, with the Drexians, who had unique musical traditions, with the Colvians, who understood orbital mechanics in ways that complemented human knowledge. Each small species brought something valuable. The Council had never bothered to look. On New Sol, Intelligence Officer Hana was compiling a report. For decades, humans had been quietly documenting everything. Every vote where human concerns were dismissed. Every treaty that exploited smaller species. Every decision that prioritized profit over safety. The report was thousands of pages long. It showed a clear pattern. The Council talked about cooperation but practiced dominance. They talked about equality but enforced hierarchy. They talked about democracy, but only the powerful species had real influence. Hana sent the report to every independent colony, every minor species, every news organization in Council space. "This is what humanity was part of," the introduction read. "This is why we left. We will not return to this system." The report caused chaos. The minor species began demanding reforms. The news organizations began investigating. Public opinion across the galaxy turned against the Council leadership. On Voxia, the food crisis was finally being resolved, but not by the Council. The Wavians, in their new partnership with humanity, had brought advanced farming techniques. Peltherian philosophers had helped Voxian leaders organize a more equitable food distribution system. Human transport ships, using their superior navigation, delivered supplies efficiently. The Council had not helped at all. Their supply ships were still getting lost or delayed. Minister Krizel stood before his people and admitted the truth. "The Council failed us. They talked about sending help, but they could not even deliver food on time. The humans and their new partners saved us, not the Council." It was a public humiliation for Velmuth and the Council leadership. The pandemic on Quenthia was contained, but again not by the Council. A group of independent human doctors, working outside of any official capacity, had traveled to Quenthia with medical supplies. They brought the old pandemic monitoring equipment that Yunji had designed. "Why are you helping us?" the Quenthian health minister asked. "Your government left us." "We left the Council," said the lead doctor, a woman named Jiwon. "We did not leave the people. We are doctors. We took an oath to help those who are suffering. But we work for ourselves now, not for a council that did not value our expertise." The human doctors saved thousands of lives. They also made sure everyone knew that they were there as private citizens, not council representatives. The border war between the Crethians and Ordnians continued, but it was spreading. Other old disputes were flaring up. Without human mediators, the council had no way to manage conflicts peacefully. Dexwell watched his peacekeeping forces fail again and again. He finally sent a message to the human government, addressed to Ambassador Tiemann. "Please, people are dying. We need your mediation skills." Timon's response was brief. We offered those skills for 200 years. You ignored our advice. You overruled our decisions. You treated our mediators as servants rather than partners. Why should we risk human lives to solve problems you created? Because people are dying, Dexville replied. People die every day, Timon wrote back. On Voxia, people died because you ignored crop disease warnings. On Quenthia, people died because you cut pandemic monitoring budgets. In hyperspace, people died because you opened navigation lanes we said were unsafe. You did not care about those deaths when they were convenient to ignore. Do not pretend to care now. The message was harsh, but it was true. The Council had dismissed every human warning. Now they were living with the consequences. In human space, the colonies were thriving. Trade between human worlds and their new partner species was growing. Cultural exchanges were happening. Joint research projects were producing new innovations. The humans had discovered something important. Without the Council's bureaucracy and politics, progress happened faster. Without the need to compromise with species who did not respect them, they could work more effectively. We should have left years ago, Haijin said to Timon. They were reviewing the economic reports from the Independent Trade Network. Perhaps, Timon agreed. But we needed to try. We needed to prove that we attempted cooperation in good faith. Now, when we build something new, no one can say we did not give the Council a chance. The Galactic Council was falling apart. 3 species had formally withdrawn, following humanity's example. A dozen more were threatening to leave. The reformist faction, led by Ixtara, was growing stronger. Velmuth called another emergency session. We must stabilize the situation. The Council is losing credibility. The Council lost credibility long ago, Ixtara said. We simply did not notice because the humans were holding everything together. Now that they are gone, everyone can see how broken we truly are. So what do you propose? Velmuth asked. Complete reform. Dissolve the current council. Build a new organization based on actual equality, not hierarchy. 8 months after the withdrawal, Ambassador Timon stood before the Human Assembly on New Sol. Representatives from every human colony world had gathered to discuss Ixtara's message. They want to reform the council, Timon said. Ixtara has proposed dissolving the old structure and building something new. She has invited us to help design it. The assembly was divided. Some humans wanted nothing to do with the council, old or new. Others believed this was an opportunity to build something better. The debate lasted for 3 days. Finally, a vote was taken. By a narrow margin, humanity agreed to send representatives to discuss the possibility of a new galactic organization. But they set strict conditions. We will talk, Timon said. But we will not rejoin the old council. If they want our participation, they must prove they have truly changed. The meeting was held on a neutral station, one not controlled by any single species. Ixtara arrived with a small delegation of reformists. Timon came with Haijin and a cultural representative named Xianwu. Velmuth was there too, but not as chairman. He had been removed from power. He attended as a minor delegate, a reminder of the old failures. Ixtara began the discussion. Thank you for coming. We know we do not deserve your presence, but we hope to earn it. Actions speak louder than words, Haijin said. What reforms are you proposing? Ixtara pulled up a document. Complete restructure. The new organization will be called the Galactic Assembly, not Council. Every species will have 1 vote, regardless of size or power. No more hierarchy. No more override votes where the majority can ignore minority concerns. That is a start, Timon said. What about decision-making? Consensus-based for major decisions. Simple majority for minor issues. But any decision that affects a specific species must have that species' approval. No more forcing policies on unwilling members. Xianwu leaned forward. He was a philosopher, someone who thought deeply about culture and values. These are good structural changes. But structure alone will not fix the problem. The old council had reasonable rules. The problem was the culture of disrespect. We know, Ixtara said. That is why we are proposing a statement of principles. Every member species must agree to these before joining. She displayed the principles. Every species has inherent worth and dignity. Expertise must be respected, regardless of the species that provides it. Help freely given should be appreciated, not exploited. Disagreement is not disrespect. Power does not equal correctness. Small does not mean unimportant. Team and read through the list carefully. These are good words. But the old council had good words too. How do we know you will follow them? You do not know, Ixtara said honestly. We cannot prove our sincerity with words. We can only prove it with time and actions. That is why we are not asking you to rejoin immediately. We are asking you to observe. Watch how we rebuild. See if we truly change. Then decide if you want to be part of it. It was a reasonable approach. The human delegation agreed to observe. Over the next 3 months, Ixtara led the assembly reformation. The first action was symbolic but important. She invited the Peltharians, Wavians, and other small species to join as founding members with full voting rights. The second action was practical. She created oversight committees to review all the decisions made in the past 50 years. Any decision where minority concerns had been ignored was reopened for discussion. The third action was an apology. A formal, public acknowledgement of every time the council had failed its members. The list was long and painful. On date 2187.34, we ignored Peltharian concerns about mining rights. On date 2203.12, we dismissed human safety warnings about hyperspace lanes. On date 2219.67, we overruled Wavian objections to agricultural policy. The list went on for hours. By the end, many delegates were openly showing distress. It was uncomfortable, but it was necessary. Velmuth stood during the apology session. I was chairman for many of these failures. I believe that efficiency was more important than consensus. I believe that large species should lead because we had more resources. I was wrong. I hurt people through arrogance. I apologize. It was humbling to watch the former chairman admit his mistakes. But it was also promising. Tiemann observed all of this from the human section. Humanity was not yet a member, but they had been given observer status. He took notes, reported back to the human assembly, and watched carefully for signs of genuine change. The assembly's first real test came when the Krethian-Ordnian border war finally needed to be resolved. Instead of forcing a solution, Ixtara used the human mediation approach. She sent small teams to talk with both sides separately. She visited the disputed asteroid field personally. She spent weeks just listening, understanding the history and culture behind the conflict. Then she proposed a solution that gave both sides something they valued. The Krethians got primary mining rights but had to share 20% of the profits. The Ordnians got secondary mining rights and control over the navigation routes through the region. Both sides agreed. The war ended. It was not a perfect solution. Neither side got everything they wanted, but both sides felt heard and respected. That was something the old council had never achieved. Haijin watched this process and sent a report to Tiemann. They are learning. Ixtara is using our methods. She is doing it well. More reforms followed. The assembly created a technology sharing program where all species could contribute and benefit equally. They established a cultural exchange system. They built a new trade network with input from multiple species. Not just the wealthy ones, they even addressed the systems that humans had maintained. Instead of trying to force humans to fix everything, they hired independent human contractors at fair wages. They asked for training instead of demanding solutions. They respected expertise. Slowly, systems began to stabilize. The food crisis on Voxia was fully resolved. The pandemic on Quenthia was contained. The communication network was repaired, though not as efficiently as when humans maintained it. Border conflicts were mediated before they became wars. It was not perfect. Progress was slower than before. But it was genuine progress, built on respect rather than exploitation. 6 months into the Reformation, Ixtara sent another message to humanity. We have tried to prove our sincerity through action. We have rebuilt our structures. We have changed our culture. We invite you to join the Galactic Assembly, not as members who must follow our rules, but as equal partners who help create them. The Human Assembly debated again. This time the vote was not close. The majority agreed that the Assembly had demonstrated real change. Teeman returned to the Assembly Station, this time not as an observer but as a potential member. He brought a proposal. Humanity will join the Galactic Assembly under these conditions. First, we retain full sovereignty over our territory and systems. Second, any decision affecting human space requires human approval. Third, we share our technology and expertise through partnership agreements, not through forced disclosure. Fourth, we maintain our independent relationships with the Peltharians, Wavians, and other species we have partnered with. These conditions are acceptable, Ixtara said. Other delegates agreed. There's one more condition, Teeman continued. The Assembly must include a permanent reminder of why humanity left the old Council. I propose that all Assembly chambers include this statement on display: those who help us are partners, not servants. Those who advise us deserve respect, not dismissal. Those who disagree with us may be right. The Assembly voted unanimously to accept this condition on the day of the formal signing. Delegates from 200 worlds gathered at the new Assembly Station. It was not the old Council chamber with its hierarchy and elevated positions. It was a circular room where every species sat at the same level, where every voice carried equally. Tam, In, and Ixtara stood at the center to sign the new charter. Around them, representatives from species large and small waited to add their signatures. Before signing, Sunwoo asked to speak. The philosopher had been quiet throughout most of the negotiations, but now he had something to say. I want to explain why humanity left, he said. It was not anger, though we had cause for anger. It was not revenge, though we had been wronged. We left because you mistook our helpfulness for weakness. You thought that because we were willing to fix your problems, we needed you. But the truth is simpler and harder. We helped you because we believed in cooperation. We fixed your problems because we cared about the people suffering. We mediated your conflicts because we valued peace. He paused, looking around the chamber. You took all of that and called it service, as if we were obligated to help you. You were wrong. We are strong. We are capable. We are self-sufficient. We chose to be part of your council. When you stopped respecting that choice, we chose to leave. The chamber was silent. Now we choose to return, Xianwu continued. Not because we need you. Not because you need us. But because we believe that this new assembly can be something better. Something built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Something where help is appreciated, not expected. Something where differences are valued, not dismissed. He looked at Ixtara. You have proven that you can change. You have shown humility. You have demonstrated respect. That is why we are here. Ixtara responded with her own speech. We learned a hard lesson.